Welcome to 60 Skills. Today we are going to talk about timing devices used in meditation. All right, first of all, why would you want to use a timing device in meditation? Well, first of all, meditation and yogic practice, like anything else, requires a lot of repetition. In some cases, you're aiming to count, for example, a certain number of mantras. In other cases, you want to perform something for a given length of time. The simple fact of the matter is, the human mind does not account for time particularly well. The result of which is, for a very long time, practitioners have been using various mechanical devices in order to account for how much practice they have been performing. This may seem intuitive, but it does need to be stated. Also, because most of what we do responds to the stress adaptation cycle, when you're practicing for a set period of time every time you engage a given technique allows you to repeat what you're trying to do more accurately. That way you can keep track of how much actual practice you are getting in. Now, one of the easiest ways to do this is to simply count a number in your head. And this has been used for a very long time. The issue is the amount of attention used to keep track of that number mentally distracts from whatever you are attempting to count manually. So let's talk about some of the commonly used tools in meditative and yogic practice for accounting for how much time you have engaged in practice. First, we have the classic string of beads. Now, again, this may be a foci with something attached to it like a sigil scroll or some charged stones or what have you. This is normally performed by taking this chain of beads, performing your technique one time, and pulling one bead down or pushing one bead forward. Counting a simple mantra using a string of beads in most cases takes about 15 minutes for most people. It can take substantially longer depending upon how long the mantra is. Okay, the string of beads work well, but again, even in this case, you're having to mechanically do something with your hand, and this can be distracting. It can also take away from generating either an electric or magnetic line of force depending upon what you're trying to do. All right, that's a string of beads. Next, we have one of my favorites, which I call the clicker. This is simply a number counter, and every time you push down, it counts one. Again, this can be used for counting mantras, or taking steps, or performing a certain number of repetitions with something, such as lifting a weight 5 times, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 on the counter. Now, these are commonly used, and with enough practice, much like the string of beads, you can learn to actuate this without too much trouble. And it won't generally distract from your internal counting. When I was doing my build-out on Franz Barden's third book, Key to the True Kabbalah, the clicker was one of the ways that I kept track of the number of recitations of a given energy I was using at a given level of reality. So this can work quite well, even if, again, it is slightly distracting. Now, if you don't need to account for the exact number of times that you do something, you just need to account for the amount of time that you're doing something, there are several modern options for this. First of all, and one of my favorites and most cost-effective, is a simple baking timer. These can be purchased at most grocery stores or online, and the great thing about these is you punch in the amount of time that you want to do something for. I put 5 seconds. You hit start, and it counts down for you. When it gets to the end, you get a nice little ring. There you go. These are very handy, and I tend to buy a couple of them. One of the things that I like about many of the modern ones is they come with a little magnet on the back. So if I'm traveling or practicing somewhere, I can just put it up on something that's metallic. It works very, very well. And again, these are very affordable. Now, if you want to get a little fancier, or perhaps you're doing something like your walking techniques, where you need to account for time, and you don't want to worry about putting something like this in your pocket, I would recommend a simple digital wristwatch. These don't have to be particularly fancy. This one happens to be from Timex and cost about $30 US. There are certainly less expensive options available for you out there. These have countdown timers on them and allow you to account for time in a variety of ways. If you're doing something like the walking techniques, they're particularly handy because it just rests on your wrist. Again, cheap, and they don't emit any kind of radiation that might interfere with your meditative practice. Now, of course, you also have simple clocks. This is a battery-powered clock that I'd take with me to a lot of meditative seminars. That way, when I'm leading the seminar, I can sit there and just trigger it when I'm working with a given group in front of me. Some of these work better, some of these are more complicated, some of these are more simple. But you can go online to any shopping source and find a variety of things that meet your need. What I would advise actually is going to a watch or clock shop and seeing what they have available. That way you can take a look at things and see which fits your needs most perfectly. This one, for example, has a handy flashlight on it. Since sometimes I conduct seminar work at night and out of doors, this can be very handy. Now, most of you are probably wondering why I haven't mentioned the use of a cellular phone or a smartphone for this purpose. They can in fact be used for this. However, if you're moving around, they're not very convenient. And finally, there's another issue that comes up with most smartphones. It's the radiation that's released by them. A lot of people find this detracts from their meditative practice, in some cases quite severely. I have one student, at least, who can't even be in the room with a microwave oven because he's so sensitive to energy. Just having the thing sit there is disturbing. Now, some would argue this is a case of mental illness. Perhaps it in fact is. But the fact of the matter is, many meditative practitioners report that having a cell phone on their person when they're attempting to concentrate fully is very distracting. The reasons for this may vary, but in general, I've found using the timer on a smartphone is not very conducive to a deep state of meditation. In fact, if I can get it approximately 1.5 meters away from me, it seems to work okay. Another thing you can do if you're using a smartphone is you can simply turn off its cellular reception along with its wireless reception. Some people note that this seems to help quite a great deal. That said, I'm more a fan of using an external or tailored timing device of one kind or another, be that a string of beads, a kitchen timer, a clicker, a mechanical wristwatch, a digital wristwatch, or what have you, for a couple of reasons. One of which is by applying a different use to an item entirely, this tends to make your mind enter the state you want to get in much more effective. And this is regardless of any kind of esoteric energy issues involved with it. The fact of the matter is, for many of us, our smartphones are something that we use quite a great deal throughout the day. So there's a lot of emotional energy attached to that device. If you have a separate device that doesn't have these issues, it tends to make concentrating much easier. So I hope you enjoyed today's lecture. If you did, please consider hitting the subscribe button and giving us a like down below. If you'd like to learn more about some of these devices or where you can acquire some of the ones I used in this video, check the details in the video down below. Otherwise, have a great day and be well.